All right, we're
But
ready.
hey, we'll work with it. Okay, it's there.
Okay, welcome to Dreaming in Jamaica Part 2. It's actually, the name of the stream is actually called or Dream Industry, but this is meant to be a continuation of the earlier
Ah,
conversation we were having, and I felt like it was
okay.
really important for us to involve people who have been doing it longer than us. Earlier we mentioned Kevin and Corretta and Camille Sylvan. I should have asked her. And Camille Sylvan Abrahams, who went out into the dark and decided that they were going to do this thing that was definitely not a thing when they decided to start. So those are our
Yeah.
guests, Coretta and Kevin, and hosting is Nathanael, who didn't want to show his face before. So
Not that I didn't want to, I couldn't.
whatever, Nathaniel. I'm Janelle,
Listen,
known as
I
Roxanne
figured it out in
online,
5 minutes.
and that's Stratos, Nathaniel. Coretta, Kevin, can you guys introduce yourselves, please?
You go
We
first,
do
Coretta.
rock, paper, scissors to see who goes first. Oh, you. I was going to do rock, paper, scissors, man. That would be way more fun. Yes, I'm Coretta Singer. I'm a 3D character modeler and generalist. I've been doing it for about, I keep saying 15 plus years, but I feel like I've been saying 15 plus years for the last 5 years, so it's about 20 years.
Wow.
So I've done a few short animated films that have won awards at Anime Caribe and places in the States and London, and I think there was one in Poland at one point. So yeah, I was once the president of Jan, well, one of the founders of Jan, president of Jan, chairperson of Jan. Now I'm just freelancing. But yeah,
Um,
that's me.
okay, Kevin.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm Kevin Jackson. I'm a 2D cutout animator. I've been doing animation for about 8 years, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
and I've won some awards with my animations. Most of them locally, one overseas in Ohio, and current outgoing president for Jan,
Mm-hmm.
and also I'm the animation director at the studio Night Vision Media. Uh, yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Um, Nathaniel, would you like to refresh the memories and
Oh,
reintroduce yourself?
Frozen, everybody else is frozen on my side.
I'm Nathaniel, otherwise, as Jenny said, known as Stratos online. I don't have any films that I can state that are well known or anything. I'm a freelance illustrator or concept artist and animator.
Right. Okay. So I had to pull up my questions a while ago. I wanted to start by asking what a successful animation industry looks like to you in Jamaica. I know that different people involved in different parts of this process will have different answers, but I feel like one point of view that we don't get a lot is the artist's point of view, the people who are actually gonna make this thing work, like make it possible. So I wanted to ask you, like, what you, to Nathaniel, what is your definition of a successful animation industry here in this country?
Okay. You want me to go first, Kevin? Or you go first this time?
If you want, I can go first this time. I'll go
Go
first this
first
time
this
since
time,
you
man.
went. All right, fine.
Exactly.
Well, all right. Interestingly, especially since it's a continuation of the last one, there was something Janelle said in the last one, which has always been on the forefront of my mind, is that I want to see this industry become something where people can make a livable wage.
Oh, jeez.
And when I say livable wage, I don't just mean, okay, yeah, I can pay my bills. I want people to be able to make enough money so that they can pay bills and they can actually save towards things. They can save towards a car, they can save towards a house, not just living, hand to mouth and just living for the joy of it. I really want people to take animation seriously. And to me, what taking animation seriously looks like is not just people no longer saying stupid things like, oh, but there's this 10-year-old down the road who can do it for less money. Not just that. I would like to see the financial institutions offering loans to creatives so that they can do bigger things, or offering, you know, investment to local animators so that we can build out. Like right now, we're kind of, from the start of this industry, we've been stuck on this whole, oh yeah, we need to do outsourcing, we need to do outsourcing. But at the same time, strongly believe that we need to be also doing our own IP, because while you're not getting outsourcing jobs, you need to be working on something. You need to be practicing with something so that people can actually see what you can do. You know, Nathanael earlier was saying he would love to do more of his own personal work, but doesn't get the time to do his personal work because he's doing all these commissions. And then investors are like, how comes I don't see anything coming out of Jamaica? It's like, because people busy trying to live. So yeah, for me, yeah, it would just be people being able to live off of animation and not having to do a million other things.
Corretta?
I would echo a lot of the similar sentiments. I mean, it's really at the grassroots level. You really want to have the animators be, you know, happy and successful, because without them being successful and them being comfortable doing what they're doing, the industry is going to fall apart, you know. So yes, having a livable wage, and like Kevin said, just being able to have a life really is very important. You know, yeah, so that, and, you know, yeah, outsourcing is great, but like Kevin said, we also want to develop our own stories and put them out there to show that, you know, what we here in Jamaica are really capable of. And that's really important. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I think it's... Is there anything else? No, my brain mash up, that's it. Kevin said it.
I find it interesting that you guys keep saying that you want, that we need to make stuff ourselves for ourselves, and that neither of you are talking about diversity, which is like a popular topic for good reason in like the international scene. We are talking about making stories for ourselves so that we may survive off our own stories, not necessarily because we want to see our own stories in the media, which we do want, but for practicality's sake, we can't depend on like outside work to keep us going. What happens when we don't have outside work? Nathanael, what does your dream industry look like?
Yeah, well, pretty much the same as what they had mentioned. The only thing I would say is that even after it's established is to have some kind of union like price. And so like it's not a case where if the industry starts growing and it starts building, that one person is charging $50 and another person is charging 1,500 for the same thing, like for the same quality as well. So protection of the IP and everything in regards to it. So outside of what they said, that's probably the only thing I have to add.
I think what I want is like a whole industry, not just like we're saying, working for other people, not just having animators and pre-production people and post-production people who are able to work on other people's stuff and their own stuff, but I also want like the Comic Cons. I think the Comic Cons are like the anime expos. We don't have Comic Cons, we have anime expos. I think the anime expos are going to evolve into something, and they're going to be so important to us, because in my experience, Comic Cons are just like a microcosm of the whole industry. I mean, the creators and the fans meeting together, and like in that space in between, there's lots of magic happening. I mean, that's where the creators work, and like that's where like industry in terms of the production houses, people who are like funding this whole experience, that's where like they get to meet in that space as well. So I feel like I would love for the industry to develop in all the ways that can be fully represented in a Comic Con, like the producers, the creators, the fans, the merch, like the interaction, the conversation, like all. I want the whole, like every aspect of that. I want that to be here, just so that we can so that we have multiple options of surviving. So we're not dependent on like one stream of income. We're not dependent on one way to make a living. Earlier, before we were trying to define what we call this talk, apart from Dreaming in Jamaica Part 2. We're saying like our dream industry, or ideal industry, or the perfect industry. And I thought that, like, our dream industry and a functional industry are two different things, because we know that for the first few decades of Korea's animation industry, they were just the outsourcing, the outsourcing like place to go for like American
Right.
animation, and that industry was working perfectly fine. But now they're doing more of their own work, and I think that could happen here, that we really could just build off of being an outsourcing location for other people's work. But I don't think that's not my ideal industry. My ideal
Yeah.
industry is making something
Right.
of myself and having people want it here and
Right.
abroad, but here, So is there like
Ideally, that was the direction that we were trying to go, which is, I think, what Kevin had mentioned earlier, was that we were just trying to outsource a lot.
Yeah.
Did it take off? Not really. But I agree with you, and I would like to see more personal IP and just being able to establish ourselves, because India did the same thing. They were outsourcing a whole lot, and then they just said, we're done. They established themselves, and then they separated themselves completely. So
They
from my
established
time.
themselves, and I think what started happening to them is they started imploding from all of the outsourcing, and they just
Oh.
said, whoa, this is destroying our industry.
Yeah.
We need to start exporting our own stuff so we can retain some of that
Right.
money from the
Because
IP.
Yeah, because the thing is that when you do outsourcing is great to get a large sum of income in early, right? But the problem is you get cut out of a large chunk of the money that's made. And I mean, not only the money that's made, but even just showing stuff. Like the amount of people that I know that have worked at GSW, they can't show you what they've worked on at GSW because of the NDAs.
Ask
And to
Joel
me, it's just kind
or
of
Jet,
ridiculous.
It's a lot,
you're
really,
doing all
for our
this great
industry.
work.
or send that to me on WhatsApp.
You're doing all this great work, and your time is consumed just doing work for this company, and you can't show anything that you've worked on. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is the amount of money that you get. It might be enough to keep the studio running and build the studio's reputation, but then the animators are not seeing a lot of that money because the companies that where the IP originates from, they sometimes they're outsourcing what's been outsourced to them, so you get a little tiny chunk of it. And if they're striking up deals where they're going to be making money on the back end from distribution in Israel and distribution in the UK and Ireland, you're not seeing any of that. Either they're giving you this set amount of money, and if there are overruns, you're going to have to figure out how to finish the animation without any extra pay and all kinds of madness. And that's what leads to the implosion. After a while, people just go, "You're tired of this, it just don't make no sense."
Yeah.
Like earlier I was listing like what my dream industry would be, and I forgot to mention customs, because like customs.
It looks like they're addressing it finally, though.
It looks like it, but we don't know. We don't know.
We don't know what's in that book, but that book is like this thick.
Yeah, it's this thick.
And so I'm hoping for something decent.
Let me tell you, I was talking to somebody today, and they were not today, last week, and we were talking about customs because we had some stuff to bring in for the fencing association, and that keeps getting stalled because customs can't tell us exactly what it's going to cost to get shipped here.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to somebody who kind of has a lot of experience, he was saying the problem with customs is they keep telling you, for you to get the price, you just have to go down there and clear it. And he's like, they don't tell you that clearing is actually a process. It's a multi-step, multi-pay process. So you pay $3,000 for them to offload the stuff off of the container. Then when they've offloaded it, they decide what it costs. And then you have to come back a couple days later and pay some other fees. And I was like, so why we can't just get that information?
I mean, minus that, their information that they have doesn't line up with what they have out there either, because I've checked their website and it does not line up with what they tell you in person. And then outside of that, them deciding how much it costs they don't. Yeah, it's kind of just like this look like it should have cost more than $50 that you have to pay. And I'm just like, how did you decide that? They're just like, we just did. And I brought in like some merchandise, so like shirts that I had made, and some hats. So I had ordered 3 hats off of my own shop, right? And I was just bringing them in as samples. And these people charged me more for the 3 hats, more in total than it cost to even manufacture them. And I was just like, where did you get that price from? So that's how much it costs. We looked it up online. I'm like, that's not possible because it's my shop. Like, I bought it off of my own website. So where did you get that cost from? And just to challenge them for it costs money. And so my courier told me, don't even bother. It doesn't make sense. It's either you pay the amount that is asked, or you pay this amount just to talk to them, and then there's a possibility that nothing comes of it. So
Yeah, so customs even Lego the youths basically.
Yeah.
So a lot of people would take more risks and try a lot more stuff and find their own strengths if they could just take the risk to bring something through customs. And another thing that I forgot to mention was culture. I want a culture change. There is like an expectation of nothing good from Jamaicans, like unless it's music and athletics, we don't really expect much from ourselves. And I think the expectation being so low.
They see your work and they say that doesn't look Jamaican.
No, it doesn't. That phrase is so irritating to me. Like
the word. I hate it. I hate it.
Hypocrites, because you hear people go, "Oh, Jamaica has the most talented people. Oh, we did the most amazing thing." But then they don't want to buy anything from Jamaica because they expect it to be of low quality.
And
you think they're so talented, but then at the same time, in the same breath, you think Jamaican stuff is low quality.
Yeah, that's also part of the union that I'm speaking of. Is that, you know, if somebody comes from abroad, they can't come here asking for a lower price because we're not in the international scene necessarily.
Nathanael, I'm not even worried about like foreigners coming to us for work. I'm worried about us coming to us for work, because if the expectation is low, it sets the bar. It sets like a restriction. Like, we have to fight them to allow us to do better when we know we can do better. We have to fight to allow them to trust us, to give them something.
I just don't like the idea of locking off completely. I'm just saying, in the case that somebody does want to approach you internationally, it needs to be established that this is how much we charge here. You're not getting a discount because this is how much we charge.
Even more so because, I'm saying even more so than just setting the prices, because I mean, I had said it to Jenille earlier this year that, you know, Jan plans to put up some prices in January, but it's going to be a living document, because we expect that, you know, as time goes by, you know, probably the prices will raise, or whatever the case is, or more and more people will come forward and say, no, actually, this is what the average is for this, and, you know, we can adjust it. But even more so, what a union would do, more so than even an association, is that a union would be able to step in and even fight wage wars. So, for example, let's say a particular studio is paying people a ridiculously low amount of money, and at the same time mandating that they have to be working some ridiculous hours, and if they don't do it, they get fired. The union is the type of body that should have the power to walk in and go, hey, we hear you're threatening to fire this person because XYZ. You know, you can't do that. You know, you're paying them this, you should be paying them that, and on top of it, you're having them working all of these hours and they're not getting compensated with the time and a half, or, you know, the double time, and blah blah blah. Like, that's where a union should really, you know, come in. There are a lot of people who actually don't know their rights. Like, one of the things that I was kind of surprised about is more the case of people being paid low wages and taxes still being taken out, even though below the tax threshold. Like, that is criminal. That is serious.
And I think
problem.
I think if we have this system set up where, like, we have the skill to do outsourcing work, we have the ambition to do the internal or the local stories, the local ideas. We have a more graceful customs. We have like the union, the union that is there to back us up, and we have like places to get jobs, like your studios there to get jobs, and the schools are better at teaching animation. all of that just combines into like a system that is designed to help us. Like if I want to do something, I'm not constantly coming up against these roadblocks. Like I have to struggle to find a printer that can consistently give me the work that I want. I have to struggle to find somebody who can make the merch that I need. I don't have to struggle to find an animator or a background designer or a character designer who can do the thing that I need to get done. Like I just want that when I try something, I'm not constantly like fighting against culture and like availability of like services and tools, and like we're always fighting for something, we're always struggling to find something. There's always like a restriction. You can do this but you can't do it as good as you, or you can't do this thing at all because customs, or because printry, or because like I don't have a car to get to the car is a personal thing, but like I want to be able to get to a place where I can buy a car to get me where I need to be to achieve this thing. You know, I want like that's the industry. So when I thought of Dream Dust, I was like, who do I want to be there? I didn't want just us. I wanted teachers to be there, which is also us, Kevin. And I wanted parents to be there, and I wanted students, and I wanted businesses. I wanted like Digicel to be here. I wanted somebody from government to be here. I wanted people who run the printers, people who make the merch. I wanted everybody in this space talking to each other to see that there are business opportunities here, and this is a space, this is basically a brand new slate to grow, and that there have been people on the ground prepping the way, so that you're not starting from scratch. Corretta started from scratch. Camille started from scratch. People who are joining in now, they're not starting from scratch. They're at a place where basically we can basically set up ourselves to just take advantage of the wide open area to make this industry.
In order for us to get what we want
what I look on for me.
Oh, okay.
Wait, can Corretta finish what she's saying first, please, and then we'll go to Kevin?
I think he wasn't hearing me when I started talking with the whole thing.
Can you hear her now?
There's a delay. No, there's a delay. So go ahead, Corretta.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I think in order for us to get what we want, all of these things, union, and getting all these people to like join in and all this stuff, we have to, and I think you've been saying it also, Jenille, that we need to just show our work. We need to just consistently create work and show our work, because that has been one of the most difficult things for us, especially with the association, when it always comes to the point of, hey, yeah, we have a bunch of animators and we want to, like, say, we were trying to get a deal with TVJ at one point to get, a block of animation on TVJ.
Mm-hmm.
And when we put out the call for animators, all of a sudden it was like crickets, and we're like, guys, hello, guys, we're trying to get, and I think that's the hard part. And the thing is with the union, there's a double-edged sword with the union, and I'm going to bring this up, not to put a wrench in the works, but we're going to have to get ourselves to a point where we're so good that it makes sense for us to have a union, because a lot of people trying to outsource to us, if they realize we have a union, they might not outsource to us because we have a union setting prices for them. They don't want that, because a lot of times they will outsource to a country, and then when they get a union, they're like, oh, you want actual wages. Next country we can take advantage of, So we have to get to the point where we're so good that it's like, okay, you want these wages? Fine, no problem. Right? So it's going to take a lot of work, not just from government and that sort of thing, but for us as well. We have to
we need to do the work ourselves.
Not be hiding our work.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Before we move on to Kevin, I just want to say that about the whole outsourcing because of cheaper wages. I was watching an interview recently, like an informal interview, and I'm not going to call a name because I don't want to get them in problems. But it's on the internet right now, and he was working in Netflix, and he was saying that he sees the industry changing a little bit. He was a showrunner, and he said that now studios are realizing that the cheaper that they pay for animation, the cheaper the work is going to be. So they're willing to just commit and pay the money to get the good work. So it just seems like we as individuals
More
just need to level up.
responsibility.
We're responsible to
Yeah.
leveling up, to convincing these people to pay us the money that we need to survive. And
But some
like,
transparency should be there in regards to that as well. It's like, if you're going to pay me less, then you can't expect the same quality. So,
Back.
Kevin, what were you going to say?
Okay, so what I wanted to say was that for me, just looking at what I want the ideal industry to look like and how to get there. We talk a lot about the studios and what we should be doing and what should be there, and all of the different businesses that spin off. The other thing is that we definitely need a better structured distribution point. Right now we have TVG and CBM, and unfortunately the model is that if you want them to show something, you have to pay them to put it on, right? And that is sort of, and that's not just Jamaica, that's the Caribbean, because the problem is the population size small, so it's kind of rough. But it would, but at
I'm
the
of
same
sorry,
time,
I'm of the opinion we should just leapfrog over that and go straight to the internet. Like if
I agree.
you're not gonna help if you're not gonna help the youths, we just
You're not going to reach the same audience though.
yeah,
Right.
that's true.
No, well, that's the thing now. It's like what I want to see with the industry, because you're right, the internet is one of the best places, and there are a lot of streaming platforms coming on board that are Caribbean, centric. They're trying to push the Caribbean content to the world. But still, just on a local level, you still need the local buy-in, and I really would love to see the industry grow from the efforts of everybody, not just the animators. The animators have to do their part. Without us, then it don't make no sense. But the financial institutions as well. Don't just look at us and go, well, I don't know how animation makes money, so I'm not going to invest in the industry. To me, there have been enough IP showing up over the years for you to know who is taking animation seriously and who is not, right? And I think it's a matter of saying, hey, let's come together and risk some money and sit with these animators and figure out how can we get this IP moving, right? And how can we use our local broadcast stations to test this IP in order to move it forward. But the thing is that they're kind of jumping the gun. They're putting the cart before the horse, in the sense that they want you to produce 52 episodes of 11 minutes in one go. And it's like, if we don't have any money, we can't get that done. But then at the same time, they don't want to take the risk of investing in that many episodes.
Also, without a proper...
We all have to take a risk together.
And that's
the thing. To me, people get so excited when they see animation on TV, animation with people that look like them.
About IP and money. Is there still a lag, Kevin?
I think
there might be.
From time to time, I'm getting a lag. It might be my digital might be acting strange as usual.
You're in the Discord chat, right?
Discord, yeah.
Oh, well, let me pause a little. In terms of about the IP and the money, there are lots of pre-conversations for Dream Dust. Like, we're just talking about all the stuff that we wanted to talk about and all the stuff that was bugging us and all the stuff that we wanted. And Gashwin made this comment. He said that as long as you don't have security, as long as you don't have money, you're just like in this is a corner working your butt off, like trying to survive. But if you had security, if you knew you were going to be okay for the next month and the next month and the month after that and for the year, you'd be able to just relax, and then magic can happen. Like, obviously necessity is the mother of invention, but also when you're safe and secure, you're able to just try stuff. Like, if I didn't have the support, if I didn't have the support of like my mom and my family, coming up, my family was the one who told me that you're going to do arts, you're going to go to an art school. They thought it would be a side gig, but it became my main thing. But they were still like, okay, this is what you're going to do and this is how you're going to make money. And they just allowed me the space and the safety to just learn and try stuff. And I wouldn't be here right now if I didn't have that security. If Nathanael's whole family wasn't like artists, he probably wouldn't be here either. So like just having money, just having like somebody invest in you can give you the security to have like something happen. And sometimes you don't know what
Yeah.
that thing is, and I understand that that's a big risk. But until then, a lot of us
Right.
are just like in our corners, struggling to make ends. Well, I don't want to say struggling, but really working hard
Yeah.
to make ends meet, like to make the personal work happen and the commission happen and the studio work happening. Like we're fighting a battle on all three fronts all the time.
Right. And that's the thing. Like I feel like the entire community, which includes the financial institutions, government, etc., have to really come together and say, hey, how do we make this work? Because let's face it, it cannot be that it's not their business, because the country's borrowed 20 million US dollars to grow this animation industry. If you're not looking at it from the perspective of, okay, yes, we're pouring money into training, right? And there's now a lot of training, right? Not saying it's great training, but there's a lot of training. Yes, you're pouring money into software and King Studio and blah, blah, blah. But then what about the animators that for years have been here and for years have been, building something? What about pouring some money into them and seeing where this can go? Because at some point you do need to have a success story. Let's face it. Let me give you a perfect example. We've gone to Kid Screen a few times, right? I would go to Kid Screen and we're looking for outsourcing work. Hey, we're in Jamaica. We have X amount of trained animators, blah, blah, blah. Come here and give us work. Then you have a company, listen me, shows up with a short film, and people go, ooh, that looks interesting. Let's have a talk with them, because they see something that you have produced, right? It wasn't a case where they're just going, oh, you have 50 animators. Okay, cool, let's give you work. No, people need to know what kind of quality you can produce.
Yeah,
They need
you have to
know
show
what
them
kind
something
of
first.
stories. Yeah, they have to show them something. Because they're always going to be looking and saying, yes, we want people to do this specific job. But at the same time, we're also looking for people who have their unique stories. Because what if one day they say, oh, we're doing an episode of SpongeBob and we need a Jamaican character. It would be nice if they got a Jamaican studio to do it, so the Jamaican studio could say, nah, Jamaicans wouldn't do that, or no, Jamaicans wouldn't eat that, or this is what, so that it has that authenticity, right? They did that in Korea when Kamal and Daniel went. They were pitched a Jamaican episode, and they liked the Jamaican episode and eventually produced it. But the fact is, they got some Jamaican input, and studios do want to know that you can bring something unique to the table. Otherwise, they could go anywhere for the service, except here that doesn't have tax incentives. We're more expensive than India, because the fact is, most people don't know this. A loaf of bread in India costs about 40 cents US versus $3 US in Jamaica.
Yeah.
So imagine the rest of the groceries. What 200 US can do in India, it can't do the same in Jamaica. So we can't charge the same as India, unfortunately.
So that's part of that. I mean, we need evidence of work so that we can encourage people to invest in us, whether it's an individual or a studio, and that's part of the reason why Dreamdust is set up the way it is. It's not about just like individual random pieces. It's about a body of work centered around an IP. So Nathanael has Bacon and Bits, which is a body of work. So he could turn that into something else. CN9 is a body of work. That's a merch line. Filmimoji is a body of work. That's WhatsApp sticker app that you can get on the Play Store. So it's always about like a body of work, which is evidence that there are people here working with like a big picture in mind.
Because that leads back to part of the issue is that, if you can't have, as you said, like some sustainability or security, you can't make the thing to show people. And that's one of the issues that I have is like, I know people want to see that you're capable of doing something first before they're willing to hire you or pay you the big money. But it's like, when do you have time to sit down and really work on that body of work when you just have to be making money?
Yeah. I just want, I mean, this is apropos of nothing, but I just remembered that like when I had told like my parental unit that I was going to do animation specifically, and they were like, okay. And I remember my grandaunt who she's basically like, she's part of the parental unit. I told my grand aunt, and like a couple days after, she saw Corretta on TV doing some interview about Nina Sky, and she was like, Jenille, it can work. I'm like, yeah, I know it can work, but no, she's seen evidence. She's seen evidence, and she was like, I wish you were here so that you could see the interview. And then I just happened to be at her house, and they repeated the interview. She's like, Janine, come here. She's online. She's on TV. So I'm like, okay. So Corretta is somebody I can look out for. And then Kingston happened, and then she was all over the place. So like, just having evidence of work is able to like get people going. But like, the stress that Corretta had to go through to get Nina Sky, and the stress that I've had to go through to get Dream Dust, and to get Hot Stepper, and to get just anything that we're doing, like the effort it's like a catch-22. Like, we need money and security to make the work, but we need work to get the money and security. So like, we're always struggling like that. You guys are more familiar with the government side of things. What do you think the government wants to see? Like, what are the results that the government wants to see? How are they validating this whole effort of animation in Jamaica?
Corretta, you want to go first?
Okay. They are obviously seeing things like very differently from us, because they're looking at things from a corporate business standpoint. They are looking for, what they've done with the industry is they've made a set of check boxes, and basically they want to know how many of those boxes can they check off to say, yes, we've become successful. Those check boxes look very different for them than it would for us. I know one of the things they have been trying to do is to push for the creation of studios, but how they're counting those studios is a little bit, there were, like, Kevin was a part of the first cohort of Boss. I was the second cohort, and every individual there was counted as a studio. And it was like, okay, yeah, but I'm just working at my yard. I don't really have a studio. I'm just a freelancer.
Yeah.
But for them, it's trying to check off those boxes. The other thing is also, if you look at probably with film as well, they want to know that at the end of their fiscal year, they can look at how much money has this industry brought into the country. You know, they're able to, pull up documents and say, well, this production came in, that production came in. The big one was James Bond last year. This came into Jamaica and brought us how much millions of US dollars. And for them, that's how they can quantify. Exactly. How many Jamaicans got hired, how much money they made, how much money was spent in Jamaica, not just on cast and crew, but, hotels and craft and whatever else we have. They want to be able to say, all right, here's how this industry is not just helping and, craft services and food and restaurants and, that sort of thing. And I think they want to see the same thing eventually for animation. We haven't had yet a love like a James Bond for animation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we're not yet at the point where we're bringing in those kind of books to say, okay, yeah, animation is bringing in this amount of money for Jamaica. And unfortunately, what that means is, like I said, their success is different from what we want. It might mean that for animation, that money might not be immediately trickling down to the animators, which then begins to ask the question of, well, what's the point of the industry if we as animators are not really going to benefit? So that's kind of, I think, how they're sort of looking at it. Kevin, you can add to that.
So you made a lot of good points, and it brings to light certain things, because we keep getting compared to the film industry, and I understand why animation is film, but it's just a completely different discipline in how you get to the end result. And film has been around in Jamaica for over 100 years. And if you're talking in terms of how long Jamaica has had control of its own film industry, then it's more along the lines of 60 years, 60, maybe 70, right? And the film industry here is still not that big yet, yes, we've been taking on a lot of overseas work because a lot of reality shows that you watch on TV are filmed here, a lot of documentaries, etc., and a lot of Jamaican crew are on those. But at the end of the day, one of the things that we don't tend to realize with the animation industry, and the government knows this because it's in a lot of the reports that they've received, is that what really helps an animation industry to grow really quickly is when a studio itself plants a satellite studio in the country and actually starts doing animation there and training people. And then when they eventually leave, you're left with the skills and you're left with the connections. We've kind of been doing it a different way where we kind of start the studio and then we try to build out those connections. But when you try to build out those connections without a reputation, you now have to rely on someone vouching for you. In the early days with the studios, it was a case where Toon Boom would vouch and say, hey, yeah, there's this studio in Jamaica, you should check them out, etc. And that lasts so long and no more. Now, in terms of what the government's looking for, I'll put this in two holes, right, or two compartments. You have the government as in the wider body, and then you have the agencies within the government that are trying to make things happen. The government as a wider body, like Corretta is saying, they are trying to tick off some boxes, right? They've promoted animation as this thing that is going to transform jobs in Jamaica, and all these, poor kids are going to get jobs, and the economy is going to boom. That's how they're selling it, right? The problem is, in their minds, they're thinking, pluck a kid off the street, put him in a classroom, learn Toon Boom, and bam, we're making animation. We know that you actually need to have some skill and you actually need to have the passion to do it, because animation is not easy. It's not like a call center job where if you can speak properly, you just go, hi, good day, my name's Bob, blah, blah, blah. It's not that simple, right? So there are people in the government who understand that, because there are people in the government who've traveled with us to Kids Screen. They're the ones responsible for us going to Kids Screen, and they've come. And they're there when they're seeing things happen and they go, oh, now I get it. They've tried to communicate that to the larger body, but all the larger body sees is, so how many contracts did we get? So how many networking opportunities did you get? They're literally just looking at the check boxes. They can't see beyond the check boxes.
Okay.
Unless you take them to Kids Screen so that they can have those hardcore conversations where literally every conversation you are in goes like this. Look at an animation studio. So what do you produce? How many people are watching it in Jamaica? And you go, none, nobody.
Yeah.
Okay, so
one of the most frustrating things that happened was
the government
we've been
doesn't
talking.
understand that fully, and that's a big
Hold on.
problem.
Getting delayed again. No, I was saying that's one of the things that happened to us. For example, we've been talking about having tax incentives in Jamaica for the longest while, and the first Kids Screen I went to, somebody saw one of my one sheets and went, "Oh, Taylor Shadows, this looks great." Me, and it was Diane Williams, went into this room. Dude had his book open. He was ready. He was writing down stuff. So yeah, so this looks really good. Like, what is this going to be, like a series and whatever? And he goes, he's writing down, and we're pitching him, and he's just like really interested. And he goes, does Jamaica have any tax incentives? And we were just like,
It's dead.
damn it.
I want to go back on something that Kevin said, that the government picks has an idea that they just pick somebody off the road or out of like a situation and put them in a classroom and teach them like some computer skills, and then all of a sudden they have like an animator ready for the industry. But it's not. Like, part of the reason why animation has gone so well for like myself, like Nathanael and Corretta, is that we've been doing art for a long time. Like, we've been doing it for basically our whole lives. So we had something to work off of when we went into animation. Like, we had to learn the specific skills for animation, of course, but we didn't have to learn how to think like an artist. We didn't have to learn how to think creatively, which is so important. It's a creative field, right? So you're not going to go into an animation studio with the same mentality as being in a call center, because it just they don't mix, it just don't compute. So like when you like, even if somebody teaches you how, it's very rare, very very rare that you find somebody who is not an artist and who takes to animation very well. There's only one person I can think of who did that, and he was surrounded by artists that was teaching him how to think
Right.
and how to make decisions and all that stuff. So you're not going to do this
Yeah.
animation thing without art. So if you're watching and you're an artist and you haven't decided on a specific thing, try animation. But it's, you're gonna need
There's a
a
lot
lot
of
of
branches you can do something.
Yeah, yeah. It also leads to something else that you had said, Janelle, about the culture. And part of our culture, especially in the educational circles, like in academia, it's the idea that creative people are dunce. So anything creative is easy to do. Because I remember in the very first, when the whole interest in building this animation industry just started, I remember some politician got up on the podium and was like, animation is easy. Anybody can do it. You don't even need to learn how to draw. And we were like, all of us animators were like, yikes.
when did they say that?
Like, abort. Who gave him this information?
Who said that? When did they say that?
When was that, like
This was
2011,
years ago.
2012?
This was
Wow.
2011, 2012, like just in the very beginning.
a
And
while
I
back.
remember that was a while back. So we were like looking at each other, going, "Who gave this guy this piece of information?" But it's also this idea, like Kevin had said, the idea of picking somebody up off of the street, because it's the idea of, oh, if you don't go to school and you never did good in a math and them things there, then yeah man, animation easy because any idiot can just do it.
That's actually
This
funny.
drawing, my kid can draw.
Animation is like the math of
Yeah.
arts.
But that's the thing, Jenny had
I like that.
Jenny had mentioned
like that.
something, a concept the other day that I was explaining to her, and she's like, "Oh, that sounds like math," and I was like, "Yeah, technically it is." And then she's like, "Yeah, that's probably why I can't get it." And I think it was like the timing charts for animation and like how it works,
Yeah, like-
and things like that. And it's very technical, especially when it comes to like rigging. Like Corretta can tell you, like rigging is not, that's not even art. Like honestly, and
That's-
Kevin can tell you from like Toon Boom rigging and whatever. It's not.
Yeah, like
My technical background in IT helped so much with the node view in Toon Boom.
No,
that-
rigging can, you know,
yeah,
can
it was.
stress you.
It can really stress you
Like-
because it feels more like math or IT than it does
Yep.
Yeah.
Like
art.
rig-
So there's still a space, but
yeah,
you still
there's-
have to understand how the art works for that to make any
Yeah, and I
sense.
think that's just something that we're gonna have to, part of like getting the industry up to scratch, is that we have to change that mentality to sort of get
educate.
people to realize that art, it's not some easy little thing to do. It's something that's hard work and it takes a lot of dedication.
like
And so, like you said, building towards the culture, that is a part of our culture that we're gonna have to like change that mentality. It's gonna take some time, but we can do it.
what Nathanael was saying about like technical skills, like and the timing charts and math. The thing is, like when I started learning animation, I started learning it the way the 9 old men, like the people who started animation like 90, 100 years ago, I started learning it like them because they had to figure it out on their own and nobody was really teaching me and I didn't know where on the internet to look at the time, so I was learning it basically the way they learned it. And the way they came up with timing charts was like they'd literally draw the arc and draw points on the arc where your drawing was supposed to meet, and I can understand that. But once they moved away from that from that approach and started moving the timing charts up into the corner of the paper, I just couldn't get it. It didn't make sense to me. I wasn't good enough yet for me to
I didn't understand it for a long time, and I can't even say that I understand it properly to explain it to somebody.
Yeah.
I just understand it enough to like, okay, I get what's going on there.
But then like
but that's just because we just didn't have formal education in that
no,
regards
we didn't.
either.
And
So
then
like you said, just learning from observation or like the 9 old men, you're just figuring it out
like
as you go along.
the technical skills now, there are entire departments in like studios that don't really draw. They're working in the studio, but they're there to make the software, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
one day I learned that there are like 40 specializations in animation, alone,
More than that.
like way more than that, and some of them have nothing to do with drawing. Some of them is just to build the software to enable to empower the artists to do their work.
Right.
So it's
That
not
actually leads back to something I wanted to mention too, is that my dream idea of an industry in Jamaica is being able to specialize. You know, it's like I would like to
Yes.
just focus on doing this because I like doing this. For me, I like special effects. I like character animation. I like character design. Like I don't want to have to do necessarily storyboards or rigging or the entire pipeline. Like that's not what I like doing. I can do it, but that's not the point. Like I would like to just specialize. So,
And
I agree with you.
when you specialize, the product comes out much better. You know. I mean, I've worked on animations by myself, and I've worked in teams. And not only is it much easier to work in a team because you're focusing on one thing, but it comes out better because how I describe it to somebody is that you have 100 units of energy, right? You can either spend that 100 units of energy on one thing, and it will come out amazing, or you have to spend that 100 units of energy on 10 different things. So each thing gets 10 units of energy. So it's going to come out at 10% of the quality you can possibly give it. What's that?
what?
It's like a character customization screen in a video game. Like you have 10 points to create this character, and you have to put them into different things like charisma and strength and whatever. So you can have a really strong character that's really dumb, or a really dumb character that's very strong.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that.
And
Exactly, you know.
also Kevin mentioned like the way that the government like checks, like have their checkbox and like they check stuff off, and how they've been getting information. They interact with people as if they're studios, but the people aren't always studios. They're just, a lot of the time they're just like freelancers. Does the government take into account individual experiences, individual results? So like maybe this year Nathanael did more commissions and he made more money and he was able to like share the work among friends, and like so there's like a group, like a small group of 4 people that did better in animation in their career this year, that's going to spread to like 8 people next year and 16 people the year after that. Are they taking into account that sort of thing? Because it feels like a lot of this development is happening on the grassroots level, and it's not yet on the level where the government can measure it in like, this money came into this industry and it's spread among these other industries, and like this is how it's been benefiting the country. It's still very, very small, like the results.
Right.
Do they like interact with people on an individual level like that? I see Corretta wants like to answer.
Yeah, I think they would love to, but it boils down to one thing: we not trust government. We don't trust government, and I think that's just the general, like just in general. I think there was a survey that was going around recently, and they were trying to get just that sort of information from individuals in the industry, and they literally, I think, got like 6 responses or something like that. The thing is, people don't want 11 or something of this sort. It was very low. But the reality is that people don't want to share, because it's the whole idea of, I don't want government knowing too much, because then they're going to start checking into, are you filing your taxes? And, oh, you're making money, so how can I take money away from you? And it's like, people who are already struggling to try and make ends meet are like, I kind of want to just do my thing over here. I'm not, like, most freelancers are not at the point where they're like big enough to worry about, okay, yeah, I can definitely make sure my all of my taxes are filed, and
Right.
I don't have to worry about
But
government coming to me.
Is it just that we don't trust government? Like Jan, like when Jan is trying to get people to participate in an activity, don't you guys also have to like beg and plead to get people to participate? Is it also that people don't trust Jan, or is it like just in the culture to just not expect anything of ourselves, so we not do nothing anyway, so like why try?
It's 2 things. I think the one thing is that people think that Jan is too close to the government, because I think at one point people were thinking that Jan is like, we're still saying everything back to the government. So it was always that thing of, let's be careful of Jan, because I'm going to tell the government everything. and them not really, them don't really trust themselves that much. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean beyond that, there's also the case where so the thing with Jan is I've heard many stories. I've heard stories where people think we're too close to the government. Heard stories, and we get the vice versa from the government. The government
Yep.
thinks that we're out here, telling everybody
Yep.
about the government this and the government that. But there was also a point in time where, because if you don't know, when Jan started, before it became an official association, it was just a Facebook group. It was literally hey, Corretta was like, hey, I'm an animator. I would love to get to know other animators and get other animators to know each other. Let me start this thing called Jamaica Animation Nation. And, people would mingle. Then Toon Boom came to Jamaica, and the head of Toon Boom at the time, John Vogelsang, said, hey, you guys really need an association, for people to take you seriously. And the suggestion was, hey, why don't you formalize the group, register it as a company, etc. And Jam Pro had pledged to help us getting off the ground after we established. They were like, hey, let's help you get off the ground. Let's have talks with each other. And we used to meet with them every Tuesday. And the whole idea was, hey, let's figure out a strategy for the country where animation is concerned. And we were there to kind of give them the animator's perspective. Now, many things happened. One, that film commissioner left. And when she left, she didn't exactly pass on what she was doing with us. And so when the next film commissioner came, she didn't even know we existed. So that was a big problem. The other problem was that there was somebody who worked at GSW who, when they left GSW, they came on the Facebook group and was posting about GSW. And we didn't take down the post because the thing was, our rule from day one was, as long as you are talking about something that has to do with animation, and as long as you're not telling nobody bad word and telling them about their mother, it's allowed, because the fact it's something that exists in the animation space in Jamaica. So people from GSW were messaging us and saying, why are you not taking down the post? And they thought
Because you're not affiliated with
anti-GSW.
anybody.
What's that?
You're not affiliated with anybody. Isn't Jan supposed to be where, like, as an animator you can
we were
talk
we're always a neutral body. That was really the whole thing, because for us, we believe if somebody had a problem somewhere, express that problem so that when we end up in a space where somebody asks us, hey, what's the problems, we can go, there's this problem over here, because somebody is venting, and if they don't vent, we don't know, it can't get fixed. So that was our thought process. We were like, we're not going to censor people for sharing their experiences, especially if it's going to, in the long term, be more beneficial to see, what's happening, as opposed to keeping it to themselves.
Kevin, can you finish your story about the GSW thing?
Yes.
Wow, Kevin really lagging.
Yeah, he's lagging.
Oh, all right. Yes.
You're
So
lagging?
basically, I'm still lagging. Yeah, so basically they came on and they were cussing out GSW about the low wages and the unfair treatment, etc. And then other people from GSW were getting upset with us because they're like, why are you not taking it off the page? And they strongly felt that we were anti-GSW because we were allowing it on the page, and we had to say to them, look, what goes on in the group, that's for animators. If animators want to talk about the studios, then, we don't have any say where that's concerned. We have a separate Jan page where only official Jan stuff is posted. So, we would not post something like that there. But this is like, the group is basically
it's a
like
private
a forum. Yeah, right? So, but they were very upset. And I mean, I came to learn years later that from people who, left GSW that, the heads of Jan had nothing good to say the heads of GSW had nothing good to say about Jan, and they basically told us that we can't be a part of Jan, and if we're a part of Jan, that they might get fired and all kind of something. And I was like, oh, okay.
All right.
So I think it's literally like a combination of enemies that we've made.
So basically you're telling me that Jan is in this weird position in the neutral ground, like you're not trusted by either side thinks you're too close to the other.
There's a saying,
and know, like you're getting flack for it.
No, there's a saying: when you're on the fence, you're everybody's enemy because you're not taking sides.
Oh,
Right.
You ever heard that before? Yeah, that's the problem. When you're neutral, you're not taking sides, and automatically it means that if I'm not taking your side, I'm against you. If I'm not taking his side, I'm against him. So that's kind of how.
That's unfortunate.
I think that as individuals we have to remember that when we talk about like our workplaces, we have to be aware of how it reflects on ourselves, how it reflects on the workplaces, and how it reflects on the platform that we're talking about these workplaces. Because like I remember I went on Twitter recently and I was like, oh, I'm tired of working, and like I had to be taken aside and they're like, yo, you might not be talking about your workplace specifically, but people know you work there, so they might assume that you're complaining about this place. But at the same time, we have to. It's a small community. We don't have much influence outside of Jamaica. We barely have influence over ourselves in the country. You as a studio, you don't have the power you think you have. You don't have like you can't like swing your big hammer and say you can't say this thing or else you will deal with the consequences because we have the power. No, we are all on the same level of power at this stage in the game. You're not Disney, you're not Nickelodeon, you're not Cartoon Network. You can't behave as if you have that sort of bucketive. You don't have like the history, you don't have like the work, you don't have the power to back up your talk the way that you act. So like in a case where like me complain about my studio can't actually they can't actually control me because like everybody is just on the same level. And I just like to reiterate that I'm very happy where I am and don't assume that I'm complaining in third person about where I work. I'm fine. If I have a problem with them, I can actually just say something to my director or my supervisor or my CEO or whatever. Because everybody is so small, we're all very close to each other. We can just lean over and talk and say, hey, this thing is working or this thing is not working or you need to fix this in this area.
Like being able to just speak about how you're feeling while you're working regardless, especially if it's not necessarily bashing the company itself or whoever you're working with. Like, I think it's healthy just for you to be able to vent about it, because I've been caught up in situations before where I said something on Twitter and I was just out of frustration at the time. Not even that I was miserable or I hated the job that I was working on or whatever. It's just, you can tolerate certain things and you might be tired at the time. And the client would message me, I'm like, hey, I saw that you said, and I was just like, don't worry about it. I might have used some strong wording like hate, but I don't literally mean hate. And it's just a matter of, people can interpret things different ways.
And I think also it depends on your working environment and work culture, because some places might just cultivate a better culture where you can speak amongst yourselves and people will listen. So like Jenille said, you can go to someone and said, hey, I don't like the way this is going, or, I'm frustrated about this. And then people will say, okay, cool, let's take that into consideration. Whereas in other environments, it might be like, no, we're not listening to you, we're doing this. And then that frustration, because it's not being listened to within that circle, boils over elsewhere. And now it's like people venting to whoever will listen.
We've got to end the stream now. DJ Sparkledust is coming on, but this was a very good conversation. I'd like to end with do you think that we're having results, like our efforts to build an industry, both individually and in groups and on a governmental level? Do you think that we're having results, and do you think that all of this is worth it?
Go ahead, Kevin.
Let's start first. No, Kevin, go. You go first.
All right.
You go first.
No, you go first. Anyway. Basically, what I always say to people is that when this animation industry just started, and I use the word just started loosely because it started before 2011. If you were to look at when Corretta started, when Adrian Lopez started, when Floyd Norman and Leah Sullivan and all of those people came to Jamaica to try and start up a studio. That would really be the first starting point. It's just that those
Yep.
eggs, you know, cracked and nothing happened.
Yeah.
So, but looking at 2011 to now, I will say that when we started, we were all in the same ship and we were all rowing in different directions. So the ship was just spinning in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think after going to Kids Screen together, I think everybody realized the direction they needed to sail. So everybody started sailing in the right direction. So I really strongly believe the industry is heading in the right direction, and that's from the animators, the studios, and the government point of view. I think right now we're at a stage where we're wondering, is the effort a little too late? You know,
Yeah.
like, do we have enough steam to get to the island? That's where I think we're at. And I think if we can keep up the steam, we will get there, because I'm very happy that the government spent money in terms of, you know, training trainers. As much as that by itself is not enough, you know, there's more that's needed. It was still a really good start. You know, in terms of the studios, I really wish they would lend more financial support to the studios, because
Yes.
at the end of the day, it's great to train. It is really great to build capacity, but where are they going to work? And if the studios fail, then the entire industry collapses, because after that, what you're going to have is a bag of people who learned animation. I'm not going to say no animation, because learning it and actually practicing it, two different things.
Yeah.
But a bunch of freelancers in their house, how are they going to get, you know, major outsourcing contracts being all over the place? You really do need the studios. So more support needs to go there.
And I'd like to point out that the training, like a lot of the training, not just like the 6 months training, but like training in the schools. The schools have to remember that you're having this course so that you can supply the studio, and not just the studio, so that the students can supply their own work. So like when you're in school, of course there's the politics where the school needs this and the school needs that, and like the money and blah blah blah, but really the course is there so that they can provide people who have skills that can provide a service for the industry. So you're not just at school for the sake of being at school. You're at school for something greater that's going to come after school. Corretta?
Yeah, very good point.
Corretta, do you think?
Very similar to Kevin. Like he says, we're kind of seeing the right way to go. But again, it's that whole question of what he said, because I was going to say the exact same. Is it too little, too late? I know that the Yeti project has like an expiration date. So the question then becomes to us, like, you know, what happens if that expiration date arrives and we haven't gotten to where we wanted to go? And I think in that case, it comes back to that whole thing that it's up to us to continue doing what we have been doing all along, because we can't necessarily wait for someone to come and save us. We have to kind of go ahead and do that. We have to, you know, keep up this community, keep up, you know, the things that we're building and creating, and all of these links, because this is something like Dream Dust and Kingstown and Jan and all these things didn't exist in the very beginning. There was no way, like Kevin was saying, like, you know, when I started that first Facebook page, I didn't really know how many other animators were out there. I think what's happened now is that it's brought a lot of people together, so we have a better idea of who's out there and what they're doing, what they're working on. And like I said, we just need to kind of concentrate on our goals for ourselves and realize that, you know, this dream industry that we want, we have to kind of fight for it tooth and nail and not necessarily wait for somebody to save us.
Yeah.
Nathanael, do you
Well,
think we're having
as Corretta
results?
said, I think we're definitely going in the right direction, because just the fact that somebody like me and you, Jenny, exist because of the people before us, like there are more of us now, and the thing is, if you keep it up, there will be more that's happening there. So I'm very grateful to those who fought tooth and nail before me, because as much as my struggle still feels like a struggle, it's probably less than what they had to go through, and that's the hope, is that somebody else below me does not have to go through the same issues that I went through, and that hopefully for them directly below me, that, you know, by the time them reach everything's up and set, and so things like this need to happen more frequently.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that the effort and the struggle is worth it because there's no real other option for me. Like art was
Yeah.
art
This has to be it.
it just has to be it. Like art was always going to be it, and once the idea of animation took hold, I haven't really let go of it yet. So it's nice that that there is some effort to make it possible to live off of it here, so I don't have to struggle my way abroad. I can if I want to, but I don't have to, which is important. So yeah,
Like
that's
options.
yeah,
Very
having
good.
options. So that is the end of our stream, guys. We're 10 minutes overdue for DJ Sparkleos. He's waiting in the wings right now.
Literally.
Literally.
Primo.
Yeah. Thank you for talking.
All right.
Talking.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Alright.
definitely. Thanks for
It's great hearing you guys' perspective.
Yeah, it is. All right.
Mm.
See you guys later. Bye.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Are we offline?
Yeah, we are.